Welcome to Life Quantum Action. This podcast is for people who already know the work and are learning how to live it. We talk all about identity, business, money, leadership, manifestation, and what it actually takes to stay with who you're becoming when life starts applying pressure. I'm Carly, and I'm really, really glad you're here. Today, I want to talk about something that I've noticed that not many people can really explain properly. And this is about that moment when things start working. You start growing, you start getting the results that you have been wanting in your business. Maybe that's more clients, maybe that's more money, maybe that is your programs selling out effortlessly. And instead of you feeling excited, and instead of you going with the momentum that you've been building, you start to feel this pressure, this insane amount of pressure. And so if you have ever had momentum build, if you've had more visibility, you've noticed more growth, more traction, and then you've found yourself hesitating, pulling back, putting the brakes on, and just quietly resetting, or perhaps even pivoting, then this episode is absolutely going to be for you. And a lot of people in this moment who experience this moment, they make it mean, or they assume that something is wrong. They make it mean that they're not ready, or that they've sabotaged themselves, and they feel like they need to fix something. And honestly, that misinterpretation is where the real problem begins. These wobbles, or this particular wobble, this wobble in this context, doesn't usually happen at the beginning, right? Because at the beginning, you're getting started, you expect things to be messy. You expect to have moments of doubt. You expect to have moments where you question yourself, what you're doing, changing up strategy and all of these different things. You expect that. But this particular wobble comes after momentum. It comes when things are actually working. When people have started responding to you, when you're, as I said, you're selling out your programs, that the people are coming in effortlessly, those results are starting to build. And you can see that next level, it's right there. It's not so far away anymore. But this wobble is so fucking subtle. It is so subtle, and I've experienced it myself on a number of occasions. I'm going to share a little about that with you guys shortly, but this is not like a dramatic self-destruction, okay? It is a lot quieter than that. This wobble is about second-guessing a decision that maybe would normally feel clear, or it's starting to soften your message, maybe delaying a launch, changing your direction just slightly, just pivoting. Have you ever been there? Have you ever been there? Because if you have, you're not alone. And maybe you just haven't been able to put a name to it. You haven't been able to give voice to it because it does feel really confusing. And for so many years, this was one of the most confusing things for me, because on paper, everything looked really good. I was building this business that I had been wanting to build, right? And even at the start of, was it 2024 or 2025? It must have been towards the end of 24 and the start of 25. I had been selling this beautiful program, Clients, Confidence and Cash, and my people were getting results. I was selling out that program every time I launched it, and the people that came in, they were getting results. I remember one of my clients had a 2-week launch. She cut it early. She was going to have a 4-week launch. She stopped the launch early because she'd already hit capacity of 9 people. 9 people in 2 weeks. And this particular client had spent 2 years just kind of circling and, thinking a lot about her program. She had it all completely designed and it was ready to go, but it was the selling part, and it was the actually getting people into that program that was feeling really tough for her. But we had so many results like that. It was a fucking good program. And then mid-2025 hit for me. And all of a sudden, I was like, I'm not selling this program anymore. I want something different. And so I went and created something else, which led to creating something else. And so internally, so even though on the outside, on paper, things were looking good, I was making good money, my clients were getting results, the program was selling effortlessly, I had a system in place and it was just doing its thing. But on the inside, and I couldn't put words to this back then, but on the inside, I felt this really strange instability as things started to grow, as things started to get what looked like were becoming more stable. I felt this really weird sense of instability, this really weird sense of uncertainty, and I just could not understand why. But eventually I started to understand that pressure, right, does not create problems. So this extra pressure that I might have been feeling with regards to visibility, oh my gosh, I'm getting more clients in, I've got more responsibility, that wasn't creating the problem. But the pressure was exposing them. The pressure was exposing the gaps in my identity. And it was showing me where I was still showing up as the woman who wasn't selling out programs, as the woman who wasn't making the money, as the woman who was still a baby coach in her business. And what it usually exposes, this pressure, is not a lack of skill. It's not a lack of strategy. It is exactly this. It is the gaps in our identity. It starts to reveal that the difference between who you think you are when no one's watching and who you believe yourself to be when the decisions matter. So when the money starts to increase, when visibility starts to increase, when responsibility starts to increase. Business is an amplifier, and it doesn't just invent insecurity, but it does turn up the volume on whatever hasn't stabilized within you and within your identity just yet. So once I actually started to understand this, what a beautiful lesson. And the actual fact is that sometimes growth does move faster than identity. In fact, a lot of the time, growth does move faster than identity. So your results, they start to expand. You start signing more clients. You start making more money. But your internal sense of self hasn't fully caught up yet. That new identity has not fully come online. It hasn't fully landed yet. And so when that happens, what do? When that happens, your system starts to look for something familiar. And that's not because you're incapable. And it's not because you're afraid of success. And I know that these are things we talk about a lot of the time, like being afraid of success. But it's because that familiarity feels safer. And familiar often looks smaller, right? It often looks like changing your offers right when they start gaining traction. And I can absolutely speak to this as I've just shared. It can look like overthinking content that used to just flow really easily. And you might find that you're spending a lot more time creating content now when it just used to flow out of you. It can look like delaying decisions, whatever that looks like. Telling yourself that I just need a little bit more clarity. And look, put your hand up if you've ever said I need a little bit more clarity, thinking that that is going to be the magic pill that solves everything for you. How many times have you, and I'm saying this because I have been there, how many times have you gone, you know what, I'm just going to take a few days out of working in the business and I'm just going to spend some time getting some more clarity, and you've gone and you've done some more ideal client work, and you've gone and you've looked over your offers and you've changed your offer ecosystem again and again and again. No shade, right? This is very common, but it's often not that little bit more clarity that is going to be the thing that changes things for you. And it sure as fuck isn't starting again. Okay, but this is what your system is going to look for. It is going to look for something familiar. It's going to look for what feels safe. Because that next level, you haven't lived it yet. So it doesn't feel safe yet. So what do? We embody that identity. We allow that identity. We stay. I'm going to be talking a lot about staying on this podcast, because changing things too soon, when I say changing things, I mean changing strategies. I mean changing offers. I mean changing how often you post. I mean changing your message. And so when we understand this, we realize, okay, I don't need to start again. What this actually is the identity lagging behind your growth, okay? Identity lag. And it's very, very common. And it's very, very common for you to naturally want to return to what feels safe. And a lot of people in this moment, and again, I'm putting my hand up because this is me. And the reason that I am so passionate, like FYI, side note, so passionate about talking about all of this stuff around identity and staying and, you know, the different changes that we make, is because this is how I have lived a big part of my 5 years in business. This is how I have lived it, right? By chopping and changing, by pivoting, by looking for that next strategy. And so for me, this last, I'm going to say 8 months has really been about understanding that at a much deeper level and being able to witness myself and the patterns that I have been repeating over these last few years. And just looking at them and observing them without judgment, but with curiosity and this kind of like, okay, cool. That's why things have felt harder than what they should. That's why things haven't quite landed. That's why we've experienced these periods of fucking phenomenal results and success, followed by periods where it's felt really tough. And so I share this with you because I know that if I've experienced this, that so many people out there either have or are experiencing it. And I think it's really important to be able to give this a voice, because, as I said before, like, not a lot of people are talking about this. Not a lot of people actually understand the role and the importance of identity when it comes to this level. And so in these moments of wobble, right, things are starting to go well. Your system wants to look for something familiar. And more often than not, one of the first things is you will start looking for another strategy. You will start going, and hands up if you've done this too, you will start going through your old notebooks where you have taken pages of notes from all of the coaches that you've worked with, all of those programs that you've done, and you will look for that thing that's going to change everything. And now strategy is not wrong. Like, we've got to have some strategy, okay? We've got to be implementing strategy in our business, right? But changing strategy and implementing strategy is not a replacement for who you're being. It is not a replacement for your identity. And it is sure as hell not going to stabilize your identity. Strategy can tell you what to do, and it can give you that path, right? All a strategy is a plan. It can give you that path. It can help you with understanding, do this, do that, do this, do that. But it can't help you stay steady while you do it. And that is why so many highly capable, intelligent, experienced people are still wobbling. Because the issue here is not competence. And it's not being inconsistent. It's coherence. And when this moment is misread, people don't usually quit. They don't usually quit because they've started to see some results, right? But they just keep starting over. They keep hitting that reset button. new angle, new messaging, new offer ecosystem, new positioning, new platforms, new energy. And over time, that gets fucking exhausting. That is probably why, if you are sitting in your business right now and you feel like things are harder than what they should be and you're feeling exhausted, that is likely why. It's because you are always rebuilding instead of building. So imagine that you are going out and building a house and you lay the foundation, you pour the slab, and you start building. You start building and you stand back and you look at the house and you're like, you know what? I don't like where I've put the front door. Let's knock it down and start again. And then you start building. You're putting up the frame, right? You're putting up the frame and maybe get a little bit further this time. And then you stand back and you look at it and you're like, oh, like I can see that this is really coming to life, but I don't like where I've put that bedroom. Let's knock it down and start again. Okay, so can you see by that analogy that that's not how we're going to build a house? But that's how we're going to invest a lot of time and a lot of energy and not actually getting where we want to go. We just knock it down and start again, knock it down and start again, knock it down and start again. And that erodes self-trust. Do you know why? Because every time you pull back, every time you put the brakes on, every time you hesitate, every time you knock it down and try to start again, your system reinforces the idea that you couldn't hold it. Not because you couldn't, but because you didn't understand what was happening. And so over time, you are becoming the person who can't build, who can't hold it. And that's your identity. That is then the identity that you're operating from. Now, I want you to understand that this phase doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. Not at all. And I really wish that I knew this over the many, many times that I have knocked down the frame and started building again in my business. It doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong, but it does mean that you're in transition. And what do we know about transitions? Transitions are often uncomfortable because they ask you to stay before it feels natural. They ask you to hold this new level before it feels familiar. And so that version of you that you say you want to be, that version who is running a successful business, who is making the money that you want to be making every month, who is working with the kind of clients that you want to be working with, doing the kind of work that you feel genuinely, wholeheartedly passionate about, you're being asked to hold that first, to hold that before it feels familiar, to be that person before you see the outcome or the results in your 3D reality. And none of this is about pushing harder. And it's not about continuously motivating yourself. It's truly about stabilizing. It's about allowing your identity to catch up to your expansion. It's about allowing who you are being to settle within yourself long enough to catch up to the growth that you've started to experience, the results that you've started to experience. Because what you need to remember is that you've been you for a very long time. You've been identifying in a certain way. You've had certain beliefs about yourself, certain thoughts, certain ways of being and doing for a very long time. And so what you're doing here is you're upgrading your software. Okay, so you've been running on iOS, fucking I don't even know the numbers these days, but like iOS 13 for the last however many years. And you want to upgrade to iOS 18. But the thing is you keep starting the upgrade and then you keep canceling it and saying, fuck nah, there's something else I need to do on my on my phone right now. I'll finish upgrading it later. But you don't get to just resume where you were. You've got to go and start it again. Start again. Start again. So allowing your new upgraded identity to catch up to how you've grown, how you've expanded, the results that you have started to get, that takes containment. And it's not about urgency. It's not about going, oh shit, okay, like if I am going to stabilize this, I have to go and do more. I have to go and release new offers. I have to make more content. Fuck no. It's not about that at all. It's about you. I was going to say the term sitting still, but it's not necessarily sitting still, but it's allowing yourself to stay and sit and be and allow that identity to come online. So it's like, again, you're updating your phone software. You're wanting to go from 13 to 18. Instead of continuing to interrupt the download every 5 minutes because there's something more important you feel like you have to do, stop and let it finish. Stop and let it finish and trust that when it has finished, that fucking phone is going to operate way better than it ever has before because you allowed it to fully install. And you're exactly the same. When you allow that new identity to fully install and to stabilize, you're going to be able to operate far better than you ever have before. You're going to see these moments where you grow and where you expand, and you're not going to hesitate anymore. You're not going to feel the need to put the brakes on. I also want to say that this is often unconscious too. Like you're probably not sitting there thinking, oh, look, I'm seeing this growth now. I'm going to put the brakes on. This is all happening under the surface, babe. And I know that what I shared earlier about clients' confidence and cash, I wasn't sitting there going, oh, I'm getting more visible now. I'm getting more clients. I'm feeling a greater level of responsibility. I'd better go and create something different and close this program. That was not consciously in my awareness. But now that we understand, okay, if I notice myself starting to have, certain thoughts, if I notice myself looking for what feels familiar, defaulting to safety, we can now start to go, okay, how interesting. I wonder what would happen if I stayed here and I allowed my identity to come fully online. So this phase, this wobble is not like, it doesn't mean you're fucking broken. It doesn't mean you're behind. And I used to be really hard on myself and think that I was behind. Whereas now, when I observe this and I understand this, I see, okay, cool. I'm not behind anything. I am creating something lasting. I am creating something sustainable. And right now I'm in this transition phase. I'm mid-transition. And that is a very, very different story. So, if this episode resonated with you at all, don't feel like you need to go and do anything with it. But just notice. Just notice perhaps where you've been misinterpreting this moment in your business or even in your life, another area where this is really super common is around health and starting, a new workout program. It's like so many people will get a few weeks in, they've been really focused on their strategy, which might be training, it might be eating a certain number of calories per day, and then all of a sudden, a couple of weeks in, I'm starting to feel a little bit lighter. That must mean I'm ready for a cheat meal, or that must mean that I'm ready for a break. And I'm not saying that there is anything wrong with having a break or a cheat meal, but where does that then turn into hitting the reset button and then feeling like you need to get out there and start again and again and again? So just start to notice where you've been perhaps misinterpreting this moment, this wobble in your life or in your business. Where have you called something sabotage when it probably wasn't actually sabotage, but maybe it was identity lag? And understand that even just creating this awareness alone will change how you move next. So if you would like to make sure that you don't miss the next episode of Life Quantum Action, then hitting the subscribe button is absolutely the easiest way to stay connected. I will see you in the next episode, and until then, you have fucking got this.